Through extensive research and a comprehensive analysis, we have found that the formal and informal institutions of a host country are key factors in deciding whether cross border business operations are successful or unsuccessful. Institutions that influence people and companies' conduct include the legal and regulatory system, cultural norms and values, political stability and corruption, infrastructure and logistics, as well as intellectual property protection. These institutions may have an influence on a range of company activities, including, but not limited to, resource accessibility, ease of doing business, and cultural differences. We have found that businesses must comprehend and adjust to these institutions if they are to successfully manage the challenges of doing business abroad. In order for businesses to effectively manage the difficulties of cross border operations, develop trust with local stakeholders, and ultimately succeed over the long term in the global marketplace, a complete grasp of the formal and informal rules of the game in any international business operations is essential.
The legal and regulatory framework as it relates to the official and informal institutions of the host nation has a significant role in determining the success of cross border activities. Uber had a number of difficulties when it initially entered the international market because of the disparities between the formal and informal systems in the host countries. Laws and regulations are examples of formal institutions that might make it difficult for businesses to start up. For instance, because to variations in formal institutions, Uber has encountered regulatory difficulties in various nations. Due to stringent laws governing cab services, Uber is facing legal challenges in Germany. Uber was compelled to stop providing its services after the German courts determined that it was doing so unlawfully. Similar regulatory issues existed for Uber in India due to the country's tight laws governing ride-hailing services. Uber was compelled by the Indian government to abide by national safety and security laws, including driver background checks and vehicle inspections. Uber has encountered several legal and regulatory obstacles in numerous nations throughout the world, emphasizing the need of comprehending and adjusting to the host country's informal institutions. Uber, for instance, was prohibited from operating in London in 2019 owing to safety concerns and legal infractions, highlighting the need of abiding by the host nation's legal and regulatory structure. Similar to this, Uber had substantial legal difficulties in Brazil in 2017 when it was charged with operating unlawfully and was subject to fines and legal repercussions. These instances highlight how crucial it is to successfully navigate the legal and regulatory landscape of the destination country while conducting cross-border company activities. Uber has achieved success in other nations, including Mexico, due to good legislative frameworks and widespread cultural acceptability. Since there are little restrictions on ride-hailing services in Mexico, Uber has been able to become a well-liked and practical means of transportation. The legal and regulatory framework is of utmost importance when it comes to establishing the successes and failures of cross-border operations.
Also concerning the informal rules of the game, consisting of normative institutions that are mechanisms through which norms influences individuals and organizations, combined with cognitive institutions which are culturally shared and supported unwritten rules. A country's regards to aspects of culture is significant in determining success and failure in operations across borders. Culture is defined to be a differentiation of individuals from those of different social groups through profound mental conditioning. For the execution of cross border operations, culture is intrinsic for international business, especially the identification and execution of accommodating for all cultural differences, as it is beneficial in obtaining a measurable market advantage amongst competitors. One real life business example of successful adaptation to culture throughout cross border operations may be seen throughout the fast food chain of McDonald's. Since its establishment in 1940, there have been extensive advancements made throughout the business's operations that have resulted in the development of a wide range of goods and services within international branches, meeting the demands of the diverse consumer sectors. Moreover, an additional part of McDonald's success in cross border operations may be largely accounted by the dual marketing plan implemented within the company, which includes a standardization strategy, but more importantly, an adaptation approach, where the business meets the demands of the consumers as determined by cultural contexts, which enables McDonald's to reach a wider market throughout the world. For example, the company tailors its menu to the needs of its customers. It departs from its traditional menu to maintain religious or cultural sentiments, which are critical mechanisms of culture due to its weight of importance, especially in international business. Nevertheless, for religious reasons, McDonald's has been able to meet these critical needs, as for instance, the franchise refrains from serving both beef and pork in India, with alternative vegetarian, fish, and chicken options made available. Ultimately, McDonald's ability to personalize its menu and business operations to accommodate the varying cultural demands across the globe has resulted in an important competitive advantage throughout the fast food enterprises, which may account for its strong brand presence and the varying franchising schemes. Culture is a comprehensive concept with a range of dimensions that influence the way people carry out basic aspects of life and determine how businesses operate both domestically and internationally. It is evident through the analysis of McDonald's execution of cross-border operations that the execution of normative and cognitive institutions that make up the informal rules of the game is necessary for the host country to succeed in international business procedures, especially for the benefits provided for businesses within.
Formal rules, including politics and government, are crucial for the success or failure of cross-border business operations. By looking into the operations of a country's government, businesses are able to determine the likelihood of successful multinational relationships. For businesses to be confident in this trading, both the host country and overseas governments instigate policies that allow trading with low-risk businesses. In addition, corruption plays a role in how successful a business will be. Countries with high corruption and low government stability tend to have harsher regulations for businesses, including the way in which they are able to trade with overseas countries. In an authoritarian regime where there is one central power, citizens have little to no individual power. For businesses, this affects how their companies are controlled and what is the legal property of the government. Ultimately, low political instability points to the failure of cross-border business operations. In Venezuela, the authoritarian government, led by Nicolas Maduro, has one of the highest rates of corruption seen in the world. Ranking 177th out of 180 countries on the Corruption Perceptions Index indicates the country's low political stability. With corruption levels as high as Venezuela, navigating successful business operations is extremely complex. As a result, multinational business operations have significantly reduced as harsh government policies make international trade difficult. This is shown through New Zealand's export of dairy. Venezuela had one of the highest import rates in Latin America of dairy products from New Zealand before 2010. Due to political corruption and instability, this has since halted, and New Zealand no longer exports dairy to Venezuela. A collapse in this system affects not only the host country, but its trading partners as well. To combat this level of political instability in Venezuela, which would in turn improve the success of cross-border business operations, the country would need a radical change in government. The government should attempt to form relationships with neighbouring countries as well as old trading partners. Free trade agreements would open this country to more opportunities and chances for a reduction of political instability. Corruption in Venezuela is a key example of how formal rules and institutions, such as political stability, have a key influence in the success or failure of cross-border business operations.
The state of the host country's infrastructure and logistics is a vital deciding factor for countries interested in investing. For example, Nigeria's infrastructure is poorly built and maintained, making it less attractive to potential investors. Their poor infrastructure and logistics make it difficult for other countries to invest in them, as it increases costs and effort. Because of this, Nigeria misses out on significant business opportunities, which can be crucial for its development as a country. Transportation is crucial for getting goods in and out of a country. The main problem Nigeria faces with transportation is congestion. Due to the poorly built and maintained infrastructure of their ports and railway systems, the industry cannot reach its full potential. It is difficult for Nigeria to expand and improve the infrastructure surrounding the ports, mainly because of the high concentration of existing buildings nearby. Slow transportation will increase delivery times, which is not an ideal factor for other countries assessing whether Nigeria is a prosperous country to invest in. The state of infrastructure directly connects to how a country's logistics can run. For example, Nigeria's poor infrastructure is the leading cause of congestion in the nation. There is a massive delay in delivery times, so customers will have to wait longer for their goods to arrive. Long delivery times can negatively affect a business's image, which can ultimately decrease sales in the long run. Efficiency within the workplace can also be impacted. If employees spend a considerable amount of time waiting for shipments to be delivered, it can negatively affect their productivity. Overall, it is crucial for Nigeria to have a stable and reliable infrastructure and logistics if they want to develop further as a country. As explained earlier, it is evident that Nigeria is not seen as a good candidate as a host country because the chances of failure are high. Investing countries will look elsewhere to participate in cross-border business operations. However, Nigeria can increase its appeal as a host nation and unleash its enormous economic potential for both local and foreign firms by making wise and strategic investments in infrastructure and logistics.
The organizational climate of the host country has a significant impact on the success or failure of international operations. Institutions are formal and informal rules and norms that govern the behavior of people and organizations in society. China is a good example of how formal and informal institutions can be successful or unsuccessful in international businesses. It has been very difficult for international companies doing business in China because of China's reputation for having a laid-back approach to the intellectual property protection systems. Clark states that the Chinese judicial system is slow and unpredictable, which makes it difficult for businesses to defend the intellectual property rights in the country. Legal publications and education on intellectual property protection should be widely implemented in China, since intellectual property protection is also essential for its enforcement. Moreover, it is advised that robust and ongoing enforcement of intellectual property laws be paired with public education campaigns on the topic. Yet China has improved its intellectual property protection significantly during the past few years. For instance, the nation's new civil law, which tightens IP protection and makes it simple for firms to sue for intellectual property infringement, was introduced in 2020. Furthermore, China has created specialist intellectual property protection courts that have a successful track record of processing intellectual property matters. In addition, legal institutions and informal institutions are also essential for China's intellectual property protection. To successfully manage China's informal rules and laws governing business activities, businesses must forge strong relationships with local partnerships and stakeholders. For example, foreign businesses who build strong bonds with the Chinese business partners are more likely to benefit from the better intellectual property protection than those who don't. To conclude what has been stated earlier, China is a great example of how formal and informal institutions have an effect on intellectual property protection.
In conclusion, Formal and informal rules and institutions are crucial in determining the failure or success of cross-border business operations. Through legal regulations, cultural norms, government stability, infrastructure, and property protection, a business or country is able to establish the framework for successful business operations.